Hi, welcome to the Inspired Connections podcast show. We're coming to you live as usual from the UK and the USA. I have the lovely Sara Ruble with me today. Sara Ruble is a soul planning specialist. Not got a clue what that means? That doesn't matter. She's going to tell you. So Sara, lovely to see you, my darling. Tell everybody a little bit about you and tell everybody how we met.
Yes, I live in Ohio, in America. And so my journey with all of this started in 1994, which is now 31 years ago, when my only child, Scott, passed, and suddenly with no sickness or anything. And so in that timing of just be confused like any other mom or dad is at that time and frantic, the day after his calling hours and funeral, I got a sign from him and I didn't even know what signs were. We're talking so long ago, we did not know that terminology, but I knew he was giving me a message. And I just held on to that for so many years. I knew nothing about soul planning. I hadn't read anything about it. It just, when I kind of tapped into that, I just ignored it. Wasn't resonating. I now go with what resonates. I feel that that's a message to me. And so really in 2007, when I read Robert Schwartz's book, Your Soul's Plan, and I'd been going to grief counseling and I'd been reading some books, but there were no groups, there was no internet, there was nothing early in my journey to connect with people. So I had to find a mom or someone near me just to talk about the grief, which is really, really hard. And yet, looking back now, I can see how purposeful that was in my journey in allowing me to push myself in ways that I had to just to find some semblance of order or understanding about where my son Scott was, because he was sending me signs, not a lot of big ones. And then, so when I read Robert Schwartz's book in 2007, Your Soul's Plan, what it really did, it gave me a name for something that had been happening, and all these things had been happening in my life. And finally I had meaning and purpose to it, which was so extraordinary because I was just kind of going from this to that, to this to that, and kind of holding things together and creating, I guess, a belief system for myself. But when I read the soul planning, meaning and purpose, it just gave me a knowing. And I then went back to something that happened to me in 2001, where Scott said to me, well, first of all, I just heard these words go through my mind that said, build the children's memorial. And it's like, I don't know what that means. And I don't know what that was. It just was a word, just words that went through like a plane would fly through. So I ignored it. And then 3 weeks later, I was sitting at a red light, daydreaming. And again, the same words said the same way, just matter-of-factly, build the children's memorial went through my mind. And it's like, is that Scott talking to me? Because I didn't even know that was possible. And I went home and I told my husband, who's not Scott's dad, do you think I'm crazy? I think Scott just told me to build a children's memorial and I have no clue how to do this. And of course, he couldn't tell me I was crazy. I understand that. And so I was already doing parents group for the local funeral home for parents. They'd asked me to lead one. So I'd been doing that for about 4 or 5 years. And so I came to those parents and I said, hey, listen, we want to build a children's memorial. That's anybody interested in helping me? And everybody rose their hand. I'm like, yes, we want to help. We want to help. And so that was the beginning of me really seeing a soul plan come together. And so we raised money. I went everywhere and asked for money, things I'd never done ever in my life. I was kind of shy and, I had been a teacher, but, really hadn't done anything on this level of going out and asking for $1,000 here or there. So I had no idea really how to do this. There was no plan. I wasn't being given anything that I thought was, steps to build this children's memorial. I just was going on this knowing that Scott wanted me to do this, needed me to do this. So we raised $50,000 in 7 months. We got the Children's Memorial built, and it was an extraordinary 500 people came, parents that, there was nothing around here to honor our children. And so we had memorial bricks all around us. And it was just filled my life up. And I'm still a part of it all these years later, so 24 years later. But when I read Robert Schwartz's book on Your Soul's Plan, it was like, this had to be planned. I had no idea. I had no desire to do any of this at the time, but I could just see the steps that were taken and the way that it was evolving and the friendships that were coming together, people I never would have known in ways that I was seeing just a much bigger picture. And so when I read Robert Schwartz's book, it was like, this has meaning. This has purpose. There's something more that I've been given, and I've been talking about soul planning ever since. So.
Amazing. Explain to the viewers, because some people won't even know what soul planning is. They might be piecing it together, but some of them will never have heard of the concept. Explain what it means in your words.
Okay. Soul planning means that we plan our lives before we are born with everyone that's going to come into our life. So, and this is nothing that we ever knew or imagined, but how beautiful it becomes when you have a greater understanding that our children were meant to be with us, no matter what we go through with them, or our parents, as hard as these experiences have been, we were meant to be with them. And it's always about the lessons, the learning, the growth, the experiences, the whole big picture of a whole lifetime, and looking at that. And the people especially that came into our lives, those people that we lived, where I was one of 4 children, and that experience with being a sibling. And so the whole meaning of soul planning is we plan our lives before we were born. Now, we don't have any emotions really in spirit, so we know that if we're going to choose something that's really challenging in this lifetime, we know at that time that we're planning it, it's going to be hard. It's going to be life-changing as well. And it's going to show us something about ourselves we never knew. People will come into our lives we never knew. And for me today to look at some of the experiences that I've had and know that I tap back into this soul planning, like I now say, if this is happening in my life, it must have been soul planned. I believe it in that much, a depth of that. Because I now have had 31, well, not 20, completely 31 years, but 25 years of really understanding this and watching my life evolve in ways that I never could have made happen. I was a school teacher, then I was a Maybelline sales rep. Being a teacher of soul planning, which I didn't know anything about, could never have entered into my life. And like you, Kat, right? You could never have imagined where you were going with all of that.
I never thought for one moment I was ever going to be a medium. Never. Never. I still pinch myself now thinking I just can't believe it's happened. I had no desire even, and that sounds really crazy because I love my job now. But when I was a head of buying, I was loving that job and I was really happy and I couldn't envisage life outside of that structure or that system. Even when the sort of things came together in the way they did, synchronicities and signs and the spirit team telling me this is what's going to happen, this is what you're going to do. I started laughing. I thought they were joking. I honestly thought it was just one big joke. And of course, now I look back and I start to giggle and go, well, that's really crazy. But in many ways, life improved in ways that I just couldn't envisage. It was something really beautiful. And like you, incredible people came into my life, and incredible people that I'm just so thankful that I have around me. And they keep coming, and some people go and some people stay. And, there is a transience to this lovely sort of work. But through that, this knowledge through people gets grown, and these experiences help other people, and it's almost like a little tree that's building itself, lots of little branches that starts to flourish with lots of green leaves, and then little blossoms grow and you harvest those blossoms to give to other people, and hey presto, just like your soul planning work, you find that you've touched many people very gently and helped them a little bit on their way to ease suffering. So I always say, and I think Galen said it really nicely last week, of, pain is inevitable in people's lives. Sometimes we all experience pain, but suffering is a choice. Suffering and how long we want to suffer, and we all have a choice as to what we do and how we manage it. And I think that's what I gauged from you actually when we met and we started to talk about soul plan, because I met you early in my journey and into mediumship, and I at the time was a non-believer, if you recall, of
We only
soul
had a
plan.
3-hour conversation on Zoom.
Yeah, it was just so fascinating, isn't it? Because there was Irene and Elizabeth asking, well, what's your opinion? What do you think? And I'm like, well, I don't want to have an opinion because until I've experienced it for myself, I don't want to talk from a place of inauthenticity. I want to talk from a place of integrity where I've got a great understanding. So I remember calling up and asking Spirit, just send me people who can teach me about this situation. And hey presto, you contacted me, and so did Robert Schwartz, who's coming on in a few weeks' time. And then the spirit world actually started sending children and loved ones from the spirit side to tell their stories and to highlight the synchronicities and the signs of a soul plan in their experiences. And that's when it got truly fascinating. And so now I sit on the other side of the coin and I go, now I've got evidence, and I can see the evidence in my own life. So one thing Robert asked me to do was to go look back at my work life. And when I looked back, even to my college days of being a lifeguard, I used to have to look after lost children and reconnect them with their parents. And here I am being a medium, reconnecting children with their parents. And so you see these lovely repetitions and patterns that appear that you never noticed. You just never know. And then you kind of chuckle to yourself thinking, how could I not see that? Like, how did I not notice that? That is weird, you know? And even, yeah, there's just so many times like that, Sarah, where I now giggle and chuckle. But I remember at the time you trying to convince me, and I was like, no, no.
And you did not give up. 3 hours is a long time. And I usually don't go that long with someone insisting they learn this. But, I think when it comes into you in a way that, such curiosity you had, and especially those of us that have lost a child or something really dramatically challenging or hard has come into your life that doesn't make any sense. The thing about soul planning, I think that I resonated with me so deeply, it brings meaning and purpose to something that didn't have any meaning or purpose. My only child passed. He was an extraordinary child. He was 19 years old. He was in college. It's like he was just everything you could hope for a child. And suddenly he's gone. He died of seizure, elevation, dehydration when he went to work at a national park for the summer. That was it. And suddenly he's gone. And that's all I could see. The soul planning really just brought meaning and purpose that I could just hang on to rather than just this is wrong. I don't use the word unfair anymore. I mean, I could say you probably think this is unfair and use the word that there, but I don't even use the word unfair anymore because I feel that everything that's come into my life now and ever was meaningful and purposeful for my soul. Not that the human part is one thing, but the soul is saying we need more. We came here with meaning and purpose. We're going to finish this plan. We're going to carry it as long as it needs to be. And then one of the most beautiful things that happened through all this is that Scott became my teacher of soul planning. And it was like I just could hear him telling me and just giving me insights or impressions of things that I never would have had otherwise. And so I never thought that would happen. So he's now like my greatest teacher. And I think that for anybody that's going through whatever experience that they're going through, is to look at this as really having that meaning and purpose that you haven't been able to go to. And if that's enough to drive you to start looking and digging into this more deeply and reading about this and just experiencing it yourself, it's a start to something in just a meaningful relationship, but also having a meaningful life purpose. And it makes my life feel so much more important than it did before. I mean, I was a mom, I was a teacher, I'd been doing things, I was kind, I cared about people. This takes it to a whole other level of like, this is the depth of who we are. This is who we are and what we're showing. And it's one of those things that I never could have imagined. And it has been a huge healing aspect for me on this journey.
Amazing. How did you first grasp, like, I know you talked about the memorial, but to somebody listening who's thinking, gosh, but how do I tell what the soul plan is in my life? Or how can I tell if this is soul connected? What do you tell them to look for, Sarah? How do you explain it to them in layman's terms?
I would think, and nobody's ever asked me this question. That's really so interesting. I would think that if it feels like there's a shift going on inside of you, something that you feel like, well, I didn't think I wanted another job. I love this job. I feel this shift going on. Or it can be if someone suddenly gets fired from their job. And it's like, what do I do now? This isn't fair. This doesn't work with me. But if you could take that into, wait a minute, what is the bigger picture of this? I love
Why
that
is
job.
this not happened? Yeah, why is this halt stopped?
Again, it seems so unfair. And yet to be able to look at it just with more, I don't know, just like I keep saying, meaning and purpose.
Maybe compassion. It's maybe looking and saying, well, actually, this door's closed for a reason because another door's about to open that you would never have gone through if this door didn't close. So it is almost like, I guess it's like a movement, isn't it? It's like a wave of energy guiding you in a way that you're never really going to fall off track because it doesn't matter which way you get there, but you're going to get there and you're going to follow that path that your soul has laid out for you. I loved what you said. I'm sure it was you that said this to me, Sarah, that life is already predetermined to a certain level, but choice is your attitude that you take towards it. So by being the observer, looking at the situation as it's starting to open up and sort of getting curious, what's this trying to tell me? What is the subject that's been explored? What's my my role in this storyline to support this situation? And suddenly you start to see things very differently. Like we had a conversation that I can't really disclose at the moment because it's confidential off screen, but we could see myself entering into that situation and all these little things starting to unfold. And you're thinking, at first you're not sure what it's about. You just know you're entering into something. And then suddenly a little light bulb comes up and you're like, the intuitive self reveals what the project is or what the situation is. And then you know what you've got to kind of sort of address and sort of realign, if you will. I suppose you're realigning energy lines and other things as well when we go through these motions. So really, really cool, isn't it? It's really, really cool. But you do get guided by signs and synchronicities throughout these sort of experiences. And you're right, you tend to meet new circles of people with new ideas, new ways of thinking. And it becomes very, very interesting, doesn't it?
It does. Yeah. And I know that this is one of those things too that is really hard to take in like right away if you never knew anything about it. And so sometimes I think that spirit just plants the seed. It's like somebody listens to this and goes, okay, but I haven't really seen that in my life. But the seed was planted intentionally by your soul spirit to take you someplace new. And having an open mind can be also helpful. And I think on this journey, I've learned to have a much more open mind than I ever had before, because I want to see the expansion, or I want to see the shifts that happen now. But I wasn't always like that. And I understand that, lots of people that I work with or friends that I know that I talk about this with, it's like it's like sometimes talking to a brick wall, and then it's like, but then they come back to me and say, but this is like what you were saying, but this is what I heard and this is what I feel, and that was the opening. And it might take 15 openings before somebody finally says, what does this mean? Is this a part of this bigger picture that we would call part of my soul? It's my soul's plan, what my soul needs. And if I look at myself now as a human, but I know more so I am a soul. And I'm here doing work that I never could have imagined. Would I've asked for this? I honestly now say I can see the bigger picture, and I know that Scott is still present. He's my teacher, so I can see that in a different way. But I think a lot of us that go into this soul planning begin to live a life that is not so chaotic sometimes, because we are actually taking in, what does this mean? Instead of reacting right away, it's like, what does this mean? Is this something I'm supposed to look at? Is this something that I should read about or ask someone about? It just opens the door to a greater experience that's probably on the way.
I guess what you're saying there is intuition plays a really big role because it bubbles up in your heart center, doesn't it? Intuitively, you feel drawn to something. Or so the job that was wonderful, and then suddenly you don't feel that and you feel pulled in a different direction. And it's trusting that pull or that drive or that instinct. And then something will trigger to kind of let you know that instinct that you're thinking, you're questioning, oh, should I go in that direction? Suddenly, oh yeah, that's a confirmation sign. And you sort of just feel your way through these sort of maps, if you will, navigation sort of zones as people are brought in and you start to see the players and the different roles. It's almost like being in a, when we do lucid dreaming, we talk about the dreamscape and the dream players and the, change agents for change, and these people that are coming in around you in the physical world, they're also coming in to evolve your soul. They're coming in to show you a different perspective. They're coming in as these sort of change makers, if you will, the dreamscape, which is your life, moving into a different sort of level of awareness or aspect of self, which is really, really powerful, isn't it? It's really, really powerful. So yeah, it's a lovely, lovely journey. What's been your favourite sort of moment on the journey so far, Sarah? What's been your biggest, oh my gosh, that's an amazing moment in my soul plan?
Oh gosh, there's been a lot. Children's Memorial was definitely one. But probably 15 years. So I've been on the slow train here on my journey, but I treasure that too. But at about 15 years, I heard Scott say to me, we need to write a blog, back when that was a big thing. And I said, I don't want to. I don't know how. I'm not interested in doing that. He said, no, I'll show you. I'll help you. It's like, I don't want to. And I was never a writer. I never had a desire to be a writer. And he says, no, just trust me. So we sat at the computer. I started writing. We had 17, at some point we had 17 blogs done. The title of them was called Death Teaches, which it does. It's a huge teacher, but life teaches. We could do that too. Death Teaches was the name of this blog. And we got to number 17. It's like, okay. And I was now really totally immersed with it, or into it, because the words were so beautiful. I was now channeling. which is another thing I never knew I could do. But that's what he opened me up to. So I was channeling this as we would write. And so we get to number 17. It's like, okay, he stops. And it's like, what now? Just trust, just trust. So I've learned to trust the journey on this with all this as well. I say that often. And one day I was driving by a building that I drove by all the time, but I saw their sign finally that said, it's called Transmit Identity. It's like, I don't even know what that means. But underneath it says we build websites. So I drove in there and I asked them if they could help me put this blog online. And when I kind of balked when they said, well, what's the title? I was like, What Death Teaches. And it's like, oh, okay. And they helped me tremendously. I ended up writing over 100 blogs with Scott that are still on at spiritteaches.org. And because we then stopped the one blog and started one with Spirit Teaches. So to have that experience of writing with Scott, like 100 blogs, and seeing what he was putting out there, I still am in awe of it because I knew nothing in the beginning and I was learning as I was going through this, the bigger picture. And he takes just like one, page at a time. I really would highly recommend anybody, looking at that and seeing if that doesn't help them with spiritteaches.org. So I think that was probably the most major thing. And now at this point in my life, my husband has dementia. So my only child passed and my husband now has dementia. And I look at this and I didn't start crying or anything. It was like I was seeing something happening with him. I now trust that this is our journey, that this was always meant to be. He was a history teacher. He was a principal at high school. So smart, so intelligent. That doesn't stop the body, the soul, from continuing on and saying, here's the next thing. So now I'm in this place of, dealing with, my husband. And yet I know I'm being guided and led with that as well. I'm just now open. And I trust, even if I'm not hearing the words, I could say something to him that I feel, should I say this? And then it's just something he really needed to hear. And so it's just an expanding program. It's this, when you kind of get to this place of understanding the bigger picture and going, I guess I need this today because it showed up. That's basically how I look at it. It showed up, and what do I do with it now? I can cry. I can stomp my feet. I can say no. I've done that a lot. And it doesn't necessarily go away because I, as Sarah, don't want that. My soul is going, but we're going to do this. Not telling me that, but keep moving on, keep pushing me. And I'm sure as a medium, you saw that developing yourself from the fashion industry to this.
Sarah, it was like when I was sharing with you when Spirit wanted me to change roles, I didn't believe them. I was quite happy on this journey of head of buying role, and suddenly what happened was little messages kept getting dropped in. I'd go support a friend who was doing a demonstration of mediumship or something, and a message would come, it's time, you've got to leave your job. I'd be like, time for what? And at first they didn't give me the guidance that I was going to immediately leave the industry. They guided me to another position first, which was a temporary contract that they wanted me to take on. And even that had beautiful depth to it, because part of my journey that you'll hear in the podcast with Elizabeth Boyson was connected to this story of Mother Teresa. And I'm not Catholic, I'm not religious. And so this was a little bit weird for me. I was like, how's this pattern kind of showing? But it's like you say, the situation or the sort of image of focus or the point of focus comes in, and you're like curious, like, why is this connection coming up with Mother Teresa? And I happened to work in the year contract that I took. I sat next to a girl who was actually the head or director of charities. And when I departed from that role, she suddenly had a change of job, placed upon her. And, she didn't see it coming. She'd been in the business a long, long time. And I happened to say, you don't happen to be free in February on this date, do you? She said, well, that's my birthday. That's really weird. I said, you didn't fancy going to India on retreat, did you? And she said, that's really weird. I've got it marked out in my diary, retreat, India. You see all these little patterns. And I was like, I have a feeling you maybe went to, come with me, or there's some information you're going to give me. And I went to a demonstration in Essex, and there was maybe about 100 people in that hall. And this message comes through, and the lady said, I've got Mother Teresa here. And I started laughing. And she said she wants to work with this charity connected to children in the spirit world, and a non-profit organisation or charity. And anyway, she said, you're not going to have to look for it. It's just going to appear, etc. And I thought, that's pretty random. I've got no connection to this kind of line of work or inquiry. So I contacted this friend that I worked with, and I said, you've got any connection to a charity belonging to Mother Teresa, have you? And she said, yeah, I do. It was the first one we ever sponsored when I started the charity section in this business. And so I said, can you send me the information? And I got the information. I was like, like, no, this is not the charity in question. When I met Elizabeth, which you'll hear on her podcast, I said to Elizabeth, can I ask you, do you have a non-profit charity? Do you have a connection to Mother Teresa? And she did. She'd served as an intern to Mother Teresa, and she had connections to Delhi in India through her father who'd worked at the embassy. And this story started to unfold. And so then I realized that one of my best friends at the time also had been blessed by Mother Teresa and had worked or lived for a week in Calcutta in one of the orphanages. And so this lovely story of working with children started to come and appear as a little theme. And that theme started to build, and all these characters started to come in with the same subject matter. Does that make sense? Is that how it works for you? And suddenly I'm watching, like, very curious, like, hang on a minute, there's connections here. This person's coming in from over here, and this person's coming in from over here, and they're all connected to the same subject. And you just stay present with it, don't you? You just watch it unfold in front of your eyes. And I'm like you. Now I'm a little bit more receptive, and I get curious and I think, what's this project about? Or what's this learning? Or, okay, all right, so the theme on this one is sensitivity, or the theme on this one is, okay, let's start learning about that. And, might go off and research some books or look at some videos or and I just really love this little dance now of, like, I stay a little bit less, I think I used to jump in a lot before. I used to be very sort of assertive, but I tend to sort of stay back a little bit now, and I'm watching a little bit more observantly as these things fall into place. I think the key thing I really like to tell the viewers is, A, don't fight them, and B, don't try to force life, because when you force life, that's when you get pain or injury. When you sit back and you observe these little soul plan things happening, and you receive it with an open heart instead of a closed heart, and you say, okay, well, this is a challenge. It's not what I necessarily saw happening in my life. It's not necessarily what I wanted or I thought it was a direction, but this is unfolding in front of me, and it feels really important. My soul wants to have this experience. It wants to experience whatever is unfolding, and that might mean that in order to do that, I've got to let go of this. I think I'm got more comfortable, Sarah, with letting go of things as I realise, that door's shutting because this door's opening, and now they want me to learn about this. And it's becoming more comfortable in a way, whereas I think before it was really uncomfortable. And I used to force things. I used to, dive into things. Now I sort of sit back. I still do the work and the hard work behind it, but I'm much more gentle of, okay, like, hang a minute, don't rush in. There's more elements going to be sent. And I use my intuition more to feel the plan as the landscape starts to change. And I find through that, then I get more of the higher rays of awareness coming in and helping me expand. You use a beautiful word. I love the word expansion. I think that's part of the spiritual journey, is it's this expansion of this unfoldment and learning to trust that unfoldment, not having to force life and set like ridiculous goals for oneself, to realize that actually some of the most passionate and beautiful things in life are these little moments that just awaken randomly around you. And if you can appreciate them and see them for what they are, the learning tools and the development of your soul, and you can play with those and experience them, then this greater level of awareness unfolds. And I think that's really powerful, and the beautiful sort of level of, I suppose it's a journey through ascension, or a journey through a purification process of the mind, the body and the spirit, as we sort of unite with a greater level of awareness and the the one force of energy, or the spiritual source of all creation. I don't mind what you call it, unconditional love, just this wonderful sort of energy that we can harness and we can use. And maybe then as well, as what I found as well, since I've seen you, I hadn't seen you for a while, in terms of, I've had a couple of situations that have repeated. So they showed me one scenario and what happens when fear is present with a situation and a person, and then they show me the same almost identical situation but with a different topic and different people, and how that's going to evolve when love is present. And look at the difference of so I can see my soul also trying to show me, look what you can teach, because you've seen this scenario, now you've seen what's come out of this scenario and how much more this blossoming and how much better this feels. And so you start to realize that repetitive things are coming up, so that you get the chance to try again. You never really fail. You just keep growing and moving through a different cycle of evolution to make a different decision before. I've even, since I last saw you, one of my really close friends, we had a really amazing experience where we were thrown together into a situation, and we unfolded a past life incarnation that was written about. And in that incarnation, he'd actually murdered me. And the documentation around it was written, you see, and we actually had the same, before Spirit did the reveal, we actually had the same conversation as we had in that lifetime, in this lifetime, but we made different decisions. And so we almost hit each other because we were like, oh my God, look at this. When it unfolded, we were like, wow, we've done the same things, but congratulations, we've like made this lifetime's decisions, definitely better decisions. And so even then there was laughter and humour and realising, it is controversial, the subject of murder and things like that, because some people will say about soul planning, yeah, but what about, suicide and how can we prevent suicide if it's already pre-purposed or planned? And the same with murder and tragic situations. It's a very controversial subject matter. But I can honestly say through some of the children that I've met in the spirit world that have passed that way, or in the scenario that I've experienced myself with this friend of mine, what I've come to realize is that there is, even in those awful traumatic situations, a higher level of awareness and understanding. And I have seen children give me evidence of them having awarenesses in certain situations before they depart and having support through those processes as well. So I'm not saying that these things are not tragic and we don't want them to happen. I wouldn't advocate for them at all. I hope that no soul comes here with that intention, but there are certainly interesting patterns to certain situations. And having seen this sort of opening in my friend's experience and my experience, it was just so kind of crazy to see how Spirit led us to reveal where we'd been and where we are now, and how we're best buddies. We like absolutely adore each other. It's kind of really weird, this idea that, maybe in another lifetime we didn't hear. It's kind of shocking to me, Sara. Do you know? It's like, it is. Yeah. No, I'm the same. I'm the same, and it is fascinating. And it's like you say, when we met 4 or 5 years ago, I had no belief in this kind of situation, and then everything's been an evolving cycle of knowledge and learning. And now I've got examples, and I've got situations that I can see that it is so intricate that there's no way those things could happen without planning of some description. You could say it's planning or miracle. It's like, I think there's a certain level, because of the things, it's the way things are set up, Sarah. Once you start observing, you notice things before they happen. And it's even more so when you're spiritual and mediumistic, because, I'll channel a piece of writing and I think it's a blog post one week, and then I realise, oh, no, it's a situation that's about to unfold, and this is the advice for that information, and so you realise, whoa, okay, right, not what I find with soul planning that I find very comforting. Two things. I feel that you don't get as emotionally involved as you would if you were not aware of what was going on. And so things that would really 5, 10 years ago really upset and traumatize me, they don't in the same way, because I'm like, oh, I've already got that preparation of, I've noticed the signs, I've noticed the synchronicities, I've got the channeling that's come from spirit that says, okay, don't worry, this is what we're going to do, and so I've got that little bit of foresight. And so I'm kind of like, okay, so the situation looks like this with my human eyes, but it feels like this with my heart. Spirit are telling me it's going to be this. And so what my role has to be is this. And if I can stay present in that moment, if I can stay in that space, I suffer less. I don't get rid of pain, but I suffer less. And so I find that's really powerful. In parents that have lost children, I found that through their eyes, not my own necessarily, but although I have had the experience of losing babies, and I could sort of touch on that actually a little bit in that, when I lost the last one, my grandfather came a few weeks before he was in spirit to say, he sang a song, and it was Smoke Gets in Your Eyes. And as soon as he sang it, I knew the baby wasn't coming. I knew he was coming to tell me the baby's not coming. I went straight home to my husband and I said, baby's not coming. My husband said, it's ridiculous. Scan looks fine. I was like, it is not. And then you see the loss of the child, and then my journey to helping parents heal. Like, wouldn't have the level of empathy to do that work and to feel that experience. And then through the eyes of the parents that I've worked with, they really introduced me to Robert Schwartz and the Soul's Gift, actually, because people were saying to me, I've had sleepless nights, but I read this book and it's changed my life. And suddenly, like, the things that I feared I'm no longer fearful of. And it explains the journey of why this soul went on this kind of journey to have this experience and how they set it up. There's so many different levels to it. Even things in my own life, I look back at childhood things that I thought were kind of a little bit irrelevant. And now suddenly they're beaming up big lights of, oh my gosh, that was the teaching scenario for this scenario that's happening now. Like, look at the parallels. So you have these moments where you kind of like, woo. But I find that parents have found it really comforting because they realize it takes some of the blame away and the shame away. Like, I can't change it. It was always going to happen. I wasn't in control of it. If it was supposed to, Robert said to me, if it wasn't supposed to happen, something would happen to prevent that. And we see that in Dennis's interview. We see where his son transitions with suicide, and then he tries and attempts to commit suicide, and spirit stop him. He's actually stopped. And so you realize that his learning was actually just to understand what had happened to his son with the medication that he was on, because he experienced the same thing. And then to have this like learning on a different level. So his son in spirit has come to teach him about this experience, and now he's helping other people. And you get these like, and that, to me, 10 years ago, that would have been really shocking. I was like, what do you mean you tried to commit? Like, that horrendous. Like, I don't want to talk about that. I don't want to go there. And now I'm like, seeing it with different, like, glasses on, if you will, filtering it with a different kind of understanding, is to say, oh, gosh, isn't that interesting? That's something that Robert said, is that if people aren't supposed to transition, they won't. And there you've got an example of it. I mean, that's just so profoundly amazing. And so I think it really helps take this coulda, shoulda, woulda away a little bit. Do you agree, Soros? That's beautiful. That's really, really beautiful. I love that. I love that, Sarah. That's a lovely way of looking at the world. Robert said to me as well, like to look backwards. Like, so I was saying about how, I work with children, parents who've lost children and I reconnect them. And then looking back at my life as a college student, as a lifeguard and looking after lost children, reconnecting parents with children, and you see these little motions and you realize, oh, look at the patterns. So I'd say to people as well that are thinking, well, what is my soul's plan? And it might not just be one purpose, it may be a series of little experiences. And I don't get hung up on one topic or one idea because it may have a branch of many, many different blossoms. But if you look back at your life, you may spot certain patterns by looking at the milestones in your life and the key things that made you pivot, and that might sort of make you realize the patterns that are moving forward in your current life to help you understand why your soul is selected to have this experience. Why is it calling in this experience? So that's kind of an interesting thing to look at as well. Great example of that, actually. I was doing trance at the Alpha Finley College and I paired up with a girl and she gave me the most amazing reading. And she basically said to me something that really was an aha moment to me. I was born slightly deaf in my right ear, and till the age of about 3, I couldn't hear very well at all. And she didn't know any of this history. She sat in front of me and she said, I know that you were born into this world with a problem with your hearing, and you chose, your soul elected to have that experience so that you would turn inwards from the very essence of your birth on earth, so that you would always listen to yourself and your intuition. And so I was like, it was the most fascinating reading, and I was like, you're 100% right. And yes, that does explain why I'll go to self first before others, and why I have a different way of acting and how I like trust this intuitiveness and go internally. It made complete sense to me because I didn't really hear until the age of about 4 or 5. When they repaired my hearing with these amazing operations. And so these fascinating kind of life experiences that we have, they all, even though at the time that could have been perceived as a negative to someone, although it was a very positive to me, I didn't really notice because I'd never had hearing. I didn't know what it was. And so I was very comfortable. I was very happy. But then I get sound. I'm like, like sound. I've gone the opposite direction now, Sarah, really loud. That idea that was to sow the seed for going inwards. Oh, I just thought that was really, really beautiful, really beautiful. And maybe gives you, again, another level of compassion or susceptibility to certain things, because I've had ladies come to my house that are deaf, and the spirit world might sign to them, or they'll lip read, or I have to teach them a different way to connect to their loved ones through touch, and I've got the patience and caring because I've had the experience myself. So it's opened me up to sort of some really extraordinary people and experiences. I love that. I love that. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Yeah, it is. It's really, really cool. And it's been a journey that has followed me throughout life. And so, yeah, I think but it shows you how planning is so ornate from the very essence, the moment that we arrive, we're already unfolding the story. We're already starting that soul plan. So, Sarah, what a lovely way to start the work on soul planning and to introduce it to everybody. Thank you so much for coming. It's been so nice to see you. Even your tone of your voice when you speak, I love it because it's so soft and so healing, and it's just so gentle. It's got a very lovely tone to it. So I appreciate all your words, but I appreciate the essence and the energy that you bring to the table today as well. So I thank you very much.